In June 2022, I travelled from Langkawi on an AirAsia flight to Singapore. And here's a photograph of an AirAsia plane. And I also took a video of myself leaving Langkawi and arrived in Singapore and travelled by taxi. It was late at night, so I didn't use the MRT, to Hotel 14, K14, and they had the small rooms, but very cheap at 50 Singapore dollars. I planned my 2 or 3 days in Singapore using a hop-on hop-off service brochure, but I purchased a Singapore tourist pass so I could use the bus and train system rather than pay through the nose for a hop-on hop-off bus tour. And on day 2 I commenced my tourist thing of Singapore, that I stopped at the local dim sum restaurant. I love dim sums, and I picked my favourite 2 dim sums, a prawn and pork buns, and then I went down to the MRT station at Lavender and caught the train right out for an hour's trip, right out to pick up some parts that I'd ordered for an engine that I had to get fixed. I travelled there by the train, and here's the picture of CLLS, and here's a picture of the head gasket kit that I purchased, and it was much cheaper than buying it from Australia or even buying it from China, in fact. On day 3 I went and visited a number of sites, including Fort Canning Park, and I used the bus system, number 2 bus, and this bus took about 40 minutes through traffic in the bus lane, and we stopped off at Fort Canning Park bus stop and went for a walk up the long stairs to the Raffles Garden. Doesn't matter where I am in the world, I like to go and visit some of the botanical gardens or parks. Then I walked to the Fort Canning gate, and whilst I was taking this video, I saw some people up top of the gate, and I wondered how to get up there, and I found this little tunnel that took me up. And these people were Australians, and they had these monster big cameras to carry around, and I just had my iPhone, and I took a video of the top of the tower, top of the gate, and obviously the gardens that surrounded it. I'm a pretty big bloke, and I had to walk down these narrow, steep stairs to get back down to the park floor, and not far away was a large cannon. Here's the picture of the cannon. And then I walked down these stairs to another walkway that encircled the whole top of the Fort Canning, probably used to defend the fortress. And here is the old British Command Centre, and it's now a 5-star hotel. Like everything else in Asia, COVID has had a dramatic effect, and there was hardly any guests. These are the gates to the main bottom area of the garden, and I walked through this area and then came across this old Christian cemetery. If you pause it, you might be able to read it. And all the plaques of deceased persons were on the wall. And just before I left Fort Canning Park, I walked through this lovely green area that you could walk down and around, but you couldn't get out because it was fenced off for repairs. So then I went to the National Museum of Singapore, and here's the back entrance to the museum, and I walked through to the front entrance and bought my ticket, and the lovely ladies at the counter gave me a senior's ticket. You weren't allowed to take video or camera shots, so these are some images from the internet of my favourite part of the museum, a light show. and then I went out the front of the museum and took this video of the building, and you can see the tank that was out the front. Before I started day 3, I went and had breakfast, and I couldn't resist it. I had another 2 servings of dim sums, but this time I had the prawn dumpling and the pork dumplings. And then I went to Chinatown and looked around the shops and things around there, and the big temple was the most prominent part of Chinatown, near the MRT railway station, and this is a few shots of inside before I realised that I could not, or wasn't allowed to, use a video camera. I'd already taken these shots. The chanting is actually lots and lots of people, including monks, reading scripture. Then I walked out the street entrance, and across the road from the temple was this lovely hawker food court where I had lunch. As you can see, there was lots and lots of different stalls, Chinese, Vietnamese and other cuisines. I chose to have a wonton mee from this stall. And here's the advertisement for the wonton mee. I had the large serving at 7 Singapore dollars, and here it is. And the drink was only about $2.50. And outside, going back to the railway station, was more street art and this unusual retaining wall. And then I got back on the MRT train from Chinatown and travelled to the MRT Little India station and walked around the Little India enclave. It was fairly disappointing, but very, very colourful and noisy. More street art, and I was lucky enough to walk across some very colourful buildings, or multicolour buildings. Notice how clean this area is. It's very typical of the whole of Singapore. The local people must have an attitude to keep their town clean. And here's another temple of sorts. Then I went back to the hotel and I came back out and had dinner. I chose to have a fish ball mee. It was dry rather than a soup, so I really enjoyed that. In the morning on day 4, I went to the National Art Gallery and also Decathlon, where I bought some new shoes. The art galleries was rather nice. They had a really, really big exhibition of Australian Aboriginal paintings and other materials, as well as history of Singapore in different decades. And then I went to the top of the building where I was able to get this absolutely wonderful panoramic video of the Marina Bay area. I never got to go there, I just ran out of time. And I went back to the hotel and collected my gear, and I planned my route to go over to Johor. I travelled to Lavender MRT station and walked about 500 metres to the Singapore Johor Express bus. It cost $4.50 Singapore dollars, and then I arrived at the different immigration sections as you cross over from Singapore to Malaysia. And as you can see, there was more than 1,000 people waiting to be checked into Malaysia. So then I caught a grub taxi from Larkin Terminal Central and went to the Grand Hallmark Hotel in Johor Bahru, and I was pleased to get back into Malaysia, where you could pay reasonable amounts of money for everything. Singapore was just a little bit expensive. The room was really, really clean and tidy, and very comfortable beds, and air conditioning, and once I got settled in, I went out and I had this lovely wonton mee dinner, and I pigged out on some cakes as well as some egg tarts and some other, I think it's called pandan cake. So the next morning I went and had breakfast. It was a really big American style breakfast in their dining area, and then I caught another grab taxi across to Centauri, I think it's pronounced, airport, and caught a scoot plane back to Langkawi International Airport, where I caught a grab taxi to the Reback Island Ferry Terminal. The video was produced by myself, and it's the end of another exciting video of my stay in Singapore, June 2022.